Ukraine has expanded their control over Kursk, even as more Russian troops surrender. Is Russia pulling out all the stops to try to get Ukraine to back off? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, so there's a whole grab bag of stories today. The first of which is, of course, the growing Ukrainian control in and around Kursk Oblast, particularly in Sudzha. Now, here's what is, I think, interesting about this. First off, Live UA is always a little behind the times, and that's not a dig at them. In this instance, they're trying to preserve the operational security of Ukrainian units who have actually been very tight in terms of releasing footage of their positions, right? Unlike the front line where changes in control happen very slowly, and so there's not really a ton of incentive to preserve, be like, oh, we're here, we're not there, right? We're we all know that there's clearly fighting happening at, for example, Novohodrivka, right? So it's not a big deal to say, oh, there's Ukrainian units here, right? No kidding, right? But when you have a dynamic maneuver advance, you can't reveal the location of your units. If you do so, it gives the enemy the ability to place your units in a location at a time, and that means that they can at least start to draw a circle. For example, if I knew a Ukrainian light infantry unit was located, again, let's say in Sudzha, and was on the move 4 hours ago, then I can sit there and say, all right, well, here's the radius where they could possibly be now. And if you know which direction they were heading, you can actually infer their subsequent location. That's why when you have maneuver units, it's really important to keep OPSEC tight. So this is kind of the least verifiable control. And even that is growing every single day, right? But what's more interesting is where the fighting's taking place. You can see here that Russian Ministry of Defense is claiming Russian troops foiled the Ukrainian advance attempt at Kauchuk, town of the Kursk region. And so what's interesting about this is, of course, here is Kauchuk, and that means that they didn't use, sometimes they say an advance near these towns. So they'll sit there and say, okay, well, it was kind of near this town here. So it could be anywhere kind of in this area. But notably, if it were closer to Sheptukova, they would have said that, right? They would have said, oh, the Ukrainians tried to advance near Sheptukova, or this town in Cyrillic here that I can't pronounce, right? Right? So that because they cited that it was near this town, it implies that at least these other towns were temporarily compromised. Again, given that they're describing it as Ukrainian advance and not, for example, a sabotage attempt or a reconnaissance attempt, it says that likely Ukrainian forces are quite a bit further in than is being openly reported. You also see, of course, this the reported seizure of Snagost, right? And some accounts actually have Ukrainian forces operating near Koronivo, right, on the outskirts of it. So we're looking at some pretty substantial gains, right? We're not seeing lightning breakthroughs. I guess this is lightning breakthroughs by this war's standards, but not by the standards of typical mechanized warfare. When we pivot over here, one other note that I thought was interesting, this little symbol here is reporting that locals are filming the Ukrainian military operating near Giri village. Again, you're seeing Giri right here, which is, again, ranging out quite a ways from this Ukrainian-controlled area, Borky or Guevo. And Guevo was reportedly seized just like 24 hours ago. So again, the takeaway here is that while it isn't like a lightning advance, this is a pretty substantive breakthrough, and the Russians have not stabilized the situation. Again, you could see evacuation announced 5 hours ago of the Belovsky district, and there's a lot of reports that, again, this district is subject to Ukrainian incursions. Now, when we look over here, you could see here's a map with even more control reported. And you can see, let's see if we can zoom in a little bit. Nope. LOL. Classic Reddit move right here. And so you can see that there is a lone zone of confirmed control. And here's this potentially occupied, right, up to Belsita. You've got some purported control, again, almost halfway to the nuclear power plant at Kurchatov. You also have, right, some reports that all of oh my gosh, Koranivo is currently under siege, right? So it's current, again, this has the Koranivo as still several kilometers from the front line. This one has it as currently under attack. So you can see that some of these reported conflicts range very far, and we're seeing just Ukrainians prioritize taking territory, but particularly taking key avenues of approach, right? Particularly this here, right? This road again towards the Kurchatov and the nuclear power plant here. I think this is a core part of actually the Ukrainian strategy. The reason being, of course, not all terrain is created equal, right? Seizing an acre of farmland is good, but if you seize a nuclear power plant or a major urban area, it is an even bigger bargaining chip relative to the Russian advances, right? When it comes time for Ukraine to negotiate with Russia for peace, they're going to say, listen, if you want Kursk back, or if you want your nuclear power plant back, you have to give us all of Zaporizhzhia Oblast, right? So you again, all chips are shaped the same, but not all chips are equally valued. And while Ukraine is happy to get some, I don't know the colors, like white chips, boy, if the Kursk nuclear power plant, that is a black chip if there ever was one. So that's the kind of thing that they're likely prioritizing. But again, what they don't want to do is go all in on one route, because it's easy to stop somebody when they're driving along one route. So instead they're saying, listen, we'll take Koronivka, we'll take border regions, we'll take other towns, we'll take parts of Belovsky district or Belgorod, right? The idea is that Russia needs to sit there and go, damn, we're going to lose a lot of turf if we don't actively redeploy large numbers of our troops and man this entire border like it's a front line. This is something that Ukraine's kind of been stuck doing, again, after the invasion in 2022. So this is a real crisis for the Russians. And it looks worse as we go. But if you're, of course, needing to stabilize your own situation, you want to work out more, you want to stay more focused at work, you need a little bit of that energy boost, right? Maybe you should check out some Strike Gum. Strike Gum, inspired by my time in Afghanistan when I had to drink military issue energy drinks that were lukewarm from the Afghan desert. Once you've had that experience just to get some caffeine, it really sticks with you. So I created Strike Gum. It's made in the USA, just down in Denver. It's got 90 milligrams of caffeine in every single piece, 100 milligrams alpha GPC, no sugar. So again, this one little piece has none of the sugar of an energy drink, but all of the caffeine. So if you want it, check it out at strikegum.com. The link is in the description. I'm saying you should pick up the 5-pack. That's going to be your best deal, especially if you haven't tried it before, because it's going to give you a pack for your glove box, a pack for your gym bag, a pack for your home office, and a pack for your office. So you'll be able to get the energy you need anywhere you go. So I'm going to link to it in the description, of course. Thanks to everybody that's picked some up. It's been awesome to see the response that we've gotten. And again, check us out, strikegum.com, veteran-owned, made in the USA. All right, so let's talk about the Russian troops surrendering. That has been some of the most viral footage that we've seen here, and it's been one of the few types of footage that the Ukrainian forces have released, right? Difficult to exactly put a location to it, but it's pretty humiliating for Putin, as lots of different, they're calling them special forces. These are the forces of Chechen strongman Ramzan Kadyrov, are reportedly surrendering en masse. And this makes sense, right? Chechen fighters, they're saying we're notorious for their ruthlessness. They're notorious for their dope TikToks. But there's lots of footage of them surrendering en masse in the Kursk region. And the reason actually is not that exceptional. I think they're simply surrendering because there's some issues going on between Russia and its Muslim minorities. You guys know in Chechnya, Dagestan, and other Caucasus regions, they're heavily Muslim. They're very different culturally from greater Russia, particularly from European metropole Russia. And so that means that for a while, Putin had a hard time, right? He needed to keep them on his team, so to speak. But Russians are they love Russia. And they love Russian culture, and they look at the Caucasus, the Muslim populations there, as being sort of not fully Russian. And so, after the terror attacks in Moscow by Muslim extremists, right? ISIS took credit for it. A lot of Russians, particularly a lot of Russian ultranationals, have been looking down on or looking very critically at the Muslim populations in the Caucasus, which is problematic for a bunch of reasons. Not only that, but Dagestani hero Khabib Nurmagomedov, MMA fighter, had his gym raided and was facing legal repercussions from the Russian state for his gym kind of hosting some of the attackers in this terror attack. So all of this is kind of combined to reduce the loyalty, the already kind of dubious loyalty that Chechen forces have had for the Russian state. So again, Chechen forces would probably lay down their lives for Chechnya, for Dagestan, for their fellow Muslims. But when you take them by unit and put them in places like Kursk Oblast and say, hey, defend these Russians who may not even like you that much, it makes sense that when push comes to shove, they're going to throw down their weapons and be like, F you guys, these Russians and Putin and the Kremlin, they hate us, so we're not going to die for you, right? So that totally tracks. What's also interesting, though, we're also seeing a lot of Russian soldiers surrendering, and these are conscripts, right? Again, conscripts, you may know, again, I can't show you the footage because of YouTube's terms of service, but the Russian conscripts, right, are prohibited from serving outside of territorial Russia, right? The conscription system exists solely to have a trained force of militarily competent men who can be called up in the event of a national security crisis, like a threat to Russian sovereign territory. So it's illegal to send them overseas in any kind of warfare adventuring. But that means that they are fighting in Kursk because Kursk is Russian territory. And this is politically really difficult for Putin because, we're talking about almost 1 million a year conscripts pass through the Russian conscription system. That means that 1 million mothers are now worried about their sons. Even if it's only a few hundred or a few thousand conscripts currently in the fighting, Russia, it's really uncomfortable for them to have to explain, hey, here's why your son died. Here's why your son was captured. And this is doubly so because a lot of these conscripts are here because they want to avoid service in Ukraine, right? If they wanted to serve in Ukraine, they could do so. They could sign that contract, right? But instead, they enter the conscription pipeline, right? Now, a lot of Russians get out of the conscription pipeline on day one, right? They find a doctor who will say, oh, you're medically unfit. Oh, you have anxiety. You got depression, right? They give them some kind of out. But a lot of Russian, particularly lower class Russians, don't have that sophistication or don't have access to those resources. And so they say, listen, serve, do your time, shut up, do not sign a contract and get out, right? And they know that they're going to be relatively safe because, again, conscripts aren't sent to the front lines, but now they are on the front lines. And when the shooting starts, they say, listen, I just wanted to get in and get out and be done. So they're surrendering in large numbers as well. And Ukraine is happy to have them because every one of those conscripts can get exchanged for a Ukrainian POW. So every Russian they capture is a Ukrainian who is going to come home. So that, I think, is why you're seeing these mass surrenders, right? Of course, conscripts in Kursk reportedly received no orders prior to the start of the operation, were unable to carry out an order to retreat due to Ukrainian mortar fire. Again, these are conscripts, and you have to think that training conscripts is not a high priority for the Russian government, right? They want to train their soldiers who are going to be actually fighting in Ukraine. So it makes sense that these troops, little initiative, even less training than Russia's already poorly trained Ukrainian forces serving in Ukraine. And so it's a huge problem, right? They're saying that there were around 100 conscripts in the oblast on August 6th when the operation started. They may be located in up to 15 positions near Suja. And many of these conscripts have been captured or killed. So there's one final step that Russia's taking, right? If it can't stop the Ukrainians militarily, what they appear to be doing, according to some reports, is in the captured Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, they appear to be burning tires, creating this billowing black smoke. It's meant to create a perception that there's something wrong at the power plant, right? You know, typically nuclear power plant cooling towers discharge water vapor, just a plume of white smoke. So like they're electing a new pope, it's discharging black smoke. But again, it doesn't take much to realize that this doesn't make any sense, right? And the reason, though, Russia would do this, right? Technically, there's not really a reason you would see this sort of thing. But the reason Russia's doing it is to remind the Ukrainians to say, listen, we still control your power plant, guy, so don't try anything funny. They're meant to be like, what if we blew it up? What if we can if we want. We're just reminding you we could do it. But of course, they're unlikely to, because destroying a nuclear power plant, like using nuclear weapons, would infuriate so much of the global stage, the global economy, that Russia's few remaining partners would likely say, listen, no. India, who's buying Russian oil, North Korea wouldn't give a shit, but China, who is North Korea's primary patron, would likely say no. This is a bridge too far, Russia. We've supported you in your war of choice in Ukraine. We've sold you gear. We've pulled out the stops to make these financial transactions happen, but you cannot go blowing up civilian nuclear power plants, because if you did so, it's going to take our best, cheapest source of new power, and it's going to make everyone, it's going to make the public turn against it. It's going to be seen as a liability. So this is a case of play stupid games, win stupid prizes by Russia. Again, I think they're trying to just create this symbolic message to Ukraine of, hey, we could if we wanted to. Anyway, guys, that is all I had. Of course, a huge thank you to the members of CombatVetNews.com, particularly Martin Baum, Greg Pace, Stuart Abel, James Brown, Daniel Brown, James Ola, Chris Holmes, Chris Gorsuch, as well as all of our lieutenant tier members. If you want access to that uncensored combat footage from Kursk, that's going to drop tomorrow on CombatVetNews.com for members. That link is in the description as well. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.